Germaine a réveillé tous nos corps.
Germaine woke us all up and now woke our bodies up, and now it's difficult for us to sit down. We're going to continue.
Bueno, empiezo yo. Vamos a proseguir.
So, we are going to continue, and we will now pass on to the last lecture today, as you all know, and we are going to explain this in our conclusions. This project was born in an utopia. It was born from the promoter of this project, Miguel Moratinos, someone we miss so much. And during this edition, we wanted to turn Minorca and Saint-Louis into a cultural Davos, a counterpower of the economic thought that dominates our lives and prevails in our lives, and to focus on this need of the creation of a thought, the meridian thought, a thought created between two, a thought that will be a counterweight for that economic thought. And we want to do this here in this international cultural meeting point. We want to reflect on the need of the utopia, and this is why, from the beginning, I wanted to have Nuccio Ordine with us to talk about utopia, because there is a perfect link with what we've seen this afternoon. These great women have talked about education, the need for education, and the work of Nuccio is precisely on that lines, that need of an education out of the economic thought, so the so-called useless thought, and in fact the need of events, cultural events like this one. So I'll give now the floor to Nuccio.
Bonsoir. Donc, vous pouvez comprendre.
Good evening. I think you can understand my despair, because to take the floor after what we've just experienced is absolutely difficult and frustrating. So I would like to ask you to excuse me from the beginning if I am not I cannot reach the same level. I would like to thank Sandra for her words, and I must admit that I'm here also because Carlos fought in a difficult dialogue with the Spanish authorities so that they would allow me to reach Saint-Louis. I would like to talk about the relationship between the teacher and the student, and the role of the school and of teaching in our societies. And I'd like to do this through some beautiful pages given to us by Camus. I'm thinking about The First Man, of course, the unfinished novel. Of course, Anne already referred to it yesterday, and as you know, it's an unfinished novel because of his accident in 1960, and it was published 34 years later in 1994. The second point is the famous letter sent to his teacher, Louis Germain, and I see this coincidence because Germain showed us what needs to be done to be a good teacher, the experience we've seen in this dancing school, and the letter sent in 1959 by Louis Germain to Camus 2 years later, and also the discourse by Camus in the RPR, founded by Sartre in 1948, the Witness of Freedom, the conference, the lecture, from which we extract this famous sentence, "There is no life without dialogue." But before I start reflecting on the texts by Camus, I would like to start with a sentence from Difficult Times by Dickens. It's a prophetic sentence because, as you know, literature, like the other arts that our society consider useless, like philosophy, art, dancing, music, and so on, are prophetic. And in this novel, we already see the dangers that emerge from instrumentalist and trade use of education. We are in an industrial city in the UK. It's a city where the only thing that counts is money, production, the market. And these words, in fact, remind us of our current times. A city where all inhabitants carry out the same gestures and do the same things. And I'm going to read this passage, this excerpt for you. In fact, everywhere we have the material aspect of the city. So the material aspect was there. The school, it was all doing. Everything that was facts. It was effect, all the time. And everything had to be assessed in figures, and anything that couldn't be sold, bought cheap and sold expensive didn't exist. And it would never exist, ever. Amen. This is just extraordinary. We don't need to comment on it. We just can close our eyes and see our present times. But I continue. People similar the ones to the others, all of them were coming out and coming back at the same time, walking at the same rhythm, on the same walkway, to do the same job, and one day that just looked just like the previous day and the day before that one. So this is a description by Dickens, and it shows a context that was just uniformity, and even the school had to respond to the interest of the market and the benefits, the profits. And we've got Marguerite, the great banker, and rendering the teacher, they reflect the guiding lines of an education that have the goal of fighting against everything that might be opposed to the materiality of effects, open to imagination. And Grandin, this horrible character, is represented with a ruler and a balance and a multiplication table in the pocket. And for him, life is doing figures, a simple calculation. And the students in this context, the pupils, are considered as just people seated in front of him, full of effect. In this prediction has unfortunately become a reality. After many years, the international parameters of education are still conditioned by the guidelines of some transnational agencies that are both public and private, including finance and trade as their reasons. for being. But we don't know it by the experts from the World Bank and the organization of the ODC and the World Trade Organization. These three organizations are the ones in charge of defining the criteria that will determine education and teaching of schools in all their member states. And the same logic is acting in the quantitative criteria, that will determine the distribution of funding for universities and research. This morning, our colleague, the physicist, referred to how basic research is so important, which is considered useless because it doesn't produce applications. So we have speed, short-term, monolingualism, English, this language that should replace all languages in the world. So the result, the outcome of these trends, the fruit of this teaching that is the market teaching, is what we're dreading. So I'm going to refer to Italy. Let's imagine Albert Camus when he was 7 or 9 years old. And now we're talking about 2008, and these school children had to respond to this exam. First question, I will always have enough money to live. Secondly, I will have the possibility, I will manage to have enough money to buy what I want. And in my opinion, to ask these questions to children who are between 7 and 9 is a crime. And this is a terrible crime that no one talks about. I published in the Correo della Sera an article about this, and I received many letters to respond to me. And not many people are courageous enough to react to this. And the education is in agreement with the religion of prophets that is prevailing. And here the idea is just to create future consumers, and that is what our pupils will become. So these principles represented by Bangiri and rendering the banker and the teacher are now embodied in a lexicon that has been imprinted, taken as a loan from the economy, the field of economy. The first words that students learn when they go to university is credit and debit.
So language is never neutral. If we learn about credit and debit, it means that something is not working. So everywhere we're talking about this. Modern school, the school of the future. Well, this, like the pandemic made us understand, seems to be invaded by computers and network. So the master class, the teacher teaching, this is considered as an obsolete tool. And we have to substitute this by spectacular software. We are forgetting that no computer can ever change the student's life, and we have completely forgotten this. And through centuries, either in a small hut in Calabria or in Africa or in the North Pole or at the greatest European universities, there is always a small miracle. There's always a good teacher who's going to change the life of a student. And I can say that because this is my personal testimonial, so that's why I am here with a false passport, because I am no expert in Camus. I have read Camus as an amateur. I've been attracted by his ideas and the relationship between the student and the teacher and the student, and many other things. Only
par
good
l'anonymat et
teachers
la discrétion,
with
ont
anonymity, with
réussi à changer
discretion,
le destin de leurs
have been
élèves.
able to
Pour
change the
cette
destiny
raison,
of their
je
students.
partage toujours
And
avec
that's
mes
why
étudiants,
I always
depuis
share
une
with
vingtaine
my
d'années,
students
la lettre qu'Albert Camus envoyée
the
en 1957
letter
à son
that Albert
instituteur du
Camus
collège
sent
d'Alger,
to his
quelques jours
teacher
après avoir
at the high
reçu
school in
le prix
Alger.
Nobel. C'est singulier quand même.
Some days after having got the Nobel Prize. You know, this is quite
Au moment où
unique.
il reçoit
Just
la plus
imagine
grande
that
honneur
he,
qu'on
well,
puisse faire à un
a writer
écrivain,
gets
qu'est-ce qu'il
the
pense
Nobel
à
Prize,
sa mère
and which
et à
is the
son
greatest
instituteur
honor
de l'école primaire,
that one can
lui,
get in
Germain.
life. And
La
actually,
collègue a lu la
what are
lettre,
his
mais
first
je pense
thoughts
qu'il faut
towards
la
his
relire.
mother and towards the teacher? I'm going to read
Cher
that
Monsieur
letter.
Germain,
Dear Mr.
j'ai
Germain,
laissé s'éteindre un peu le bruit qui m'a
I
entouré
have
tous ces
let
jours-ci
all
avant de
this
venir
noise
vous
that
parler
surrounded
du
me all
monde
these
réel.
days
On vient de me
turn
faire un
down a
bien trop
little.
grand honneur
I
que je n'ai
have
ni
been
cherché,
privileged with
ni
too
sollicité.
great honor
Mais quand
that I never
je n'ai appris
requested,
la
that I
nouvelle, ma
never
première pensée
thought
après ma
of.
mère a
But
été
you know,
pour
when
vous.
I heard the news,
Sans
my
vous,
first thoughts were
sans
for
cette
my
main
mother and you.
affectueuse que vous avez tendue
Without you,
au
without
petit
this
enfant
affectionate
pauvre
hand
que j'étais.
that you were
Sans votre enseignement et
giving to
votre
that
exemple,
children,
rien
without
de tout
your
cela ne serait
teaching,
arrivé.
without your
Je ne
example,
me fais pas un monde
nothing
de cette sorte de
like
mère.
this would have
Mais
happened.
celui-là
So,
est du moins une occasion
this
pour
is
vous
an
dire
occasion
ce que vous
to
avez
tell
été
you
et êtes
what you
toujours pour
have
moi,
been for
et pour
me
vous assurer
and
que
what
vos
you still
efforts,
are to me.
votre
And I would
travail
like to assure you
et le
that
cœur
your
généreux
endeavors
que
and
vous y
your
mettiez
work
sont
and
toujours
your
vivants
enthusiasm
chez
for
un
your
des
profession
petits
are
écoliers
still
qui,
alive
malgré l'âge,
in
n'a pas
that
cessé
little
d'être
student
votre
who,
reconnaissant
in
élève.
spite of the
Je
age,
vous embrasse
never
de toute
ceased
ma
to be
force.
grateful to you.
Je
I would
pense,
like to
je pense que cette
thank you
lettre
for this.
peut nous
I
donner
think that this letter
véritablement l'idée de ce que doit être
gives us
le
the
véritable
real
enseignement, la
idea
véritable
of
mission de
what the real mission of the teacher
c'est-à-dire
is.
changer
This
la
is
vie
the
des étudiants.
true
Bien sûr,
teaching.
pas-
And
la
this
mission,
is
ce n'est
about
pas de faire
changing the life of students.
à nos étudiants comme de
It's
futurs prix Nobel.
not that we
Camus
have
a
to
été
think
une
of as
exception.
students
Mais
as
comme
future
j'ai dit,
Nobel
chaque
Prizes.
jour,
Camus was an
dans chaque
exception.
petit village,
However,
il y a un professeur
each
qui peut changer la vie de quelqu'un.
person, each student in
Très important.
whatever small town in the world, they can find a good teacher that may change their lives. And the teacher must be educating, he must be training the man, the future man, the citizen. A teacher who believes that he's there to offer to the students a way to learn in life, to exercise criticism, to understand
à l'intérieur de notre société.
what is dominating in our
Je ne
society.
vais pas faire aujourd'hui
I'm not here
l'école
today
d'Alger un modèle.
to
Non, ce n'est pas ça.
transform the school of Algiers into a model. This is not the point in my speech. I'm going to analyze how Camus describes this teacher, Germain, this teacher who was unique, who changed his life. So in the first man, we find elements that help us reflect on the very important role of a teacher in the life of a student. Jacques, the character who goes to Algiers to recognize his past, Jacques recognizes that there's this teacher, Monsieur Bernard, and this is curious because the novel isn't finished, but it's interesting to see that in the chapter dedicated to school, instead of Monsieur Bernard, Camus talks about Germain. So one never forgets that this is the real character. So I would like to read this piece because Mr. Bernard, his teacher, had had such a weight to modify the destiny of that child who was one of his students.
le même rôle, le professeur qui
So
change la vie,
it's the
est
same
confirmé dans les
role.
pages initiales du
It's the
roman.
role of the teacher who changes lives. This is confirmed in the first pages of the novel. This is the visit that Jacques pays to Monsieur Malin in the city.
Quand il va dans cette ville, il va
When he
rendre
goes to that
hommage
city,
à son père.
he's going there
à
to
son
pay
professeur.
tribute to his
Alors, le
father and to his
manuscrit nous
teacher.
révèle, entre
And this is a
parenthèses,
manuscript
les
that
initiales JG.
contains the GJ
Malin,
initials.
peut-être tout le monde
So,
pense que soit Jean
Mr.
Grenier,
Malin
son professeur
could
de
be Jean
philosophie
Grenier,
au lycée d'Alger.
and this would be the
Camus
teacher,
lui
the
dédie
philosophy
l'envers et l'endroit
at
de son premier livre en 37
Alger.
et l'homme révolté en
So
51.
in Camus
Jacques
writes
reconnaît
Betwixt and
que
Between
Malin
and then The
lui avait
Rebel,
ouvert
and
toutes
he
les
discovers
portes des choses qu'il avait
that
aimées dans sa vie.
he has taught so many things in life.
Parce que, continua Corméry, lorsque j'étais très jeune, très sot
And
et très
actually,
seul, vous vous
when-
souvenez à Alger, vous vous êtes tourné vers moi et vous m'avez ouvert.
When I was in
sans
Alger,
paraître,
I
les portes
turned to
de tout
you
ce
and
que
you
j'aime
opened
au
all your doors to us.
Jacques reconnaît que
Jacques recognizes
Malin
that Malin
lui a donné beaucoup parce que
gave him a lot,
le fait d'être doué,
because
ce n'est
today
pas suffisant.
the
Donc,
fact
il y a
of
encore une belle citation sur ce
being
sujet,
killed is not enough.
quand il dit
And there is also a piece of the book that talks about it.
Je voulais vous dire seulement que je vous aime avec vos défauts.
I would like to say
J'aime. Non,
that,
c'est pas ça la citation,
I'm sorry, I got the wrong
elle est là,
quote.
elle est là. Donc, oh, vous êtes doué,
Oh,
certainement.
you're gifted.
Mais au
Yes,
plus doué,
indeed.
il faut un
Oh,
initiateur.
but now for the gifted, we need initiators. We need people who will tell you the path. These person must always be respected and loved. This is my faith. So this is what Jacques is saying. And, well, he expresses his faith and gratitude towards the teacher who changes life. So it's the role of the master, of the teacher. It's the role to change the student's life and also to help the students live. And in this regard, he says, I just wanted to tell you that I love you with all your defects. I do not worship many people, and I'm ashamed of my indifference, but what I love, about what I love, nothing would ever stop me from loving it. So this is a love declaration in the end towards an exceptional being, the teacher. So in the chapter devoted to school, Camus insists on the importance of the relationship between between teacher and student. And the teacher, Bernard, is an exceptional man. And this is a way to state the distance between himself and other students. Monsieur Bernard does not think that students are, something that you need to fill in. He just wants to trigger curiosity in the students and to respect their diversity. He says, no, school does not only give them passion or life in a family. At Mr. Bernard's classroom, it would show discovery. In other classrooms, lots of things were taught. But it would be like, as if you were feeding a person with, or an animal, you would be making people gobble knowledge. But it seems for the first time that with Mr. Germain, students exist and they are subject to consideration and they're invited to discover the world. And this is another aspect of dialogue. This is a genuine dialogue because it recognizes the other. And the teacher recognizes his students. The teacher sees these students as individuals, as persons. There is another quote, and I'm sorry because I'm mixing my pages. I took the copies at the last minute. But it says, even the teacher didn't only want to teach them what he was meant to teach them. The teacher went beyond. He would even welcome them in his simplicity. He would tell them about his childhood and the story of his life. So by recognizing students, the teacher gets into his personal life and establishes a dialogue in which students are as important as the teacher. And the teacher is important for the students in the same way that students are important for the teacher. So Mr. Bernard is not gobbling or force-feeding chicken, It's not like it's not that they are being force-fed in order to get them ready for the labor market. And students are not considered as clients either, because this is how students are nowadays. Mr. Bernard considers that students are human beings and they deserve the highest attention by the teacher. So he does not force-feed. Bernard listens, observes, and totally devotes to his students. So there's always a dialogue that is very much dependent on silences, looks, and gestures. And it's just as our friend, the dancer, said with her body, and that's why, today with online teaching, students lose contact because there's no visual contact. I always look at teachers, at my students in the eyes, and sometimes I think, well, why did I not get the attention of my students when they don't look at me? Because, it's not only students that learn from teachers, it's teachers who learn from students as well. And Bernard tells us that in order to teach, and this is an important point, you must welcome students in your own personal life. So, teaching, being a professor, is not only a profession, it's a vocation. And this is important because this is what we read in Camus' pages. So, Bernard was not dogmatic. He was anti-clerical, but at the same time he would respect religion. He would condemn everything that would prevent discussion. And in the letter that he writes to Camus in 1949, this is very well explained. He says, before finishing, I'm going to tell you how badly I feel as a secular teacher in front of this threat. I think that throughout my career I have respected the right of every child to look for its own truth. And today the truth is contrary. Today the truth is a service, and students must be validated for the profit of money. And I think that I have loved you all, and I didn't want to impose my ideas. I wanted you to use your intelligence, and whenever God was an issue, I would say that some would believe and others wouldn't, and within a full enjoyment of everybody's rights, you would do whatever you decide that is to be done. And I would add that there were people and practitioners of different religions. So actually the teacher is totally aware of this fact. You can see that in the letter. But actually, in order to teach, and this is something in which I have insisted a lot, Bernard tells us that in order to teach, you must love what you're teaching. And that's why being a teacher is not simply a job. If I do not love literature, dance, or philosophy, if I do not love these things, and if this is not part of my life, because I have experienced it as a human being, well then, it is impossible to convey this love. I can only convey what I love to my students, because conveying without love is like not conveying. I'm going to read you another fragment. He would listen a story with all his heart. We're talking about Jacques. He would listen with all his heart the story that the teacher would read. So actually, in order to teach with the heart, you must teach with the heart and learn with the heart. You must love what you teach. And you must make this passion emerge inside you and inside your students. This is what being a good teacher means. It's the knowledge that we can convey, which is proportional to the love that we feel for those things that we're teaching. So the more I love, the more I will be able to convey this love and knowledge to my pupils. Through the experience of Louis Germain and Jean Grenier, Camus makes us understand that teaching is a vocation. This is a vocation that goes beyond teaching in itself, and that goes beyond human dialogue between teachers and students. It is a vital interaction for both. There are some pages in that novel, The First Man, that really amazed me, because there's something so personal. But there are emotional pages in which Germain talks with the grandmother of Albert, because actually at the end of his school life, Camus was destined to work in order to bring a salary to the family. And Germain realizes that Albert is gifted, so what to do about that? And he consults the family, and the family goes, well, the father goes, no, you must work, you must get a salary for the family. And Germain decides to go to talk to the grandmother instead of the father. And this is fantastic. I would like to read a lot, but I can't. And this dialogue, I would just like to give you the last part of it, because at some point the grandmother says, okay, but who's going to teach my grandchild to take the exam? And Germain goes, I will do it myself. And the grandmother goes, I cannot pay you. Look at the reply by Germain. So the grandmother goes, I have forgotten, you were saying that you would give additional lessons to Jacques. Yes, of course. Well, he's not going to have fun, believe me. But we will not be able to pay you. Now, Mr. Bernard was looking at her, and he was holding Jack by the shoulders. He said, "Never mind," and he was shaking Jacques. "He has already paid me. He paid me with his work, with his love, with the things that he learned at school." Well, I could read many other beautiful pages, but we should think of the title of this colloquium, "The Witness of Freedom," in 1948. He says there's no life without a dialogue, and here we see the dogmatism of the single thinking. There is no dialogue if there's only one single thought. There's no dialogue, there's no life. Now, when we think and we uphold the entire world in the name of one single theory, one single profit, then the world is absolutely deprived of everything, and there is no other way than cutting the roots that attach man to life and man to man. Camus says, here we're not seeking unity, because unity is the harmony of the opposites. Here we're looking for totality and crushing differences, and we know, we have explained this very well, how important different is, because difference is the wealth. Difference is not an obstacle, it is a wealth. So, the goal of figures and measures is to pollute all aspects of education and teaching in schools and universities around. It's the computational logic which seems to be the natural means nowadays of this entrepreneurial conception of education, which is entirely polarized on the pretended requirements of the market. It's the enterprise school or the enterprise university. It's like a business. It's a business to sell and buy diplomas, and people buy that in order to get an open gate to labor, to the working market. And actually, universities want to acquire their prestige by rankings and scorings, international scorings, where the commercial value of these schools and universities goes up and down depending on how much those diplomas are bought and sold. So, but we cannot assess that. And assessment is not only about measuring. Assessment would orient teaching and research. It would be a guide showing the direction to follow in the future. And it is at the base of every choice. Actually, I always ask my pupils the following. I always choose to teach first-year students at university. Normally, professors at a certain age, they think that it is a master's course, which is more prestigious. However, I prefer the freshmen who get to the first degree, because, well, there's a professor who tells, life is like a shirt. You've got the buttons, and if you get the first button wrong, well, you will get all the others wrong. So that's why you need to take students at the very first year, and this is a choice I made.
And I always ask them, why did you decide to come to university? And they're surprised, Well, of course, because we want to have a degree. And I believe that today the job of a good professor or a good teacher is to explain the students that in order to go to the university is not just to get a degree. A goal you need to have is to become better, to be free, to have a critical thinking, something that we've lost today. So in this context, where students think that they need to study to learn a profession and be able to earn money in the labor market, we're going to be a sort of corruption of the students. When we talk about this, students listen to us. They are moved. I can guarantee you this to you. I teach in La Calabria. This is a very poor region in Italy, and it's a choice for me, because without the University of Calabria, I would have never been able to study in the university, and this is a debt I have to this region, to this university, and it's thanks to them that I am who I am. And I see that students demand values to make students believe that you need to study to have a degree and be able to work and earn money is an enormous misery. So this relationship between the teacher and the pupil in this context today is truly important. I am sure that here are teachers and professors who teach in students and universities. Well, it's terrible. Teachers are now bureaucrats. They have to participate in meetings, in the different boards, for the doctorate, for the PhD, for the masters, for the faculty meeting, and do a lot of papers and things. And the last thing we ask professors to do is to research, prepare lessons, and talk to the students like German talked to his students. But apparently, today, the evaluation system is going in that direction. So in this context, and I'm coming to the end of my lecture, so here Camus helps us rediscover the key role of teaching students and of education, of this relationship between the teacher and the pupil. German expresses Camus expresses his love for his teacher, a love many of us have known, because when someone asks us about a student, when you're in a meeting or in a faculty meeting, you go, well, this student has a natural talent for philosophy, that other one for literature, that it's like in your DNA, you have maths, chemistry, literature, whatever. That's not the case. Students love the fields that have been taught to them by teachers who made them love that field. And I am professor of literature because I've met professors who made me love literature. I didn't have literature in my DNA. And Camus acknowledges all this, and it is a debt in the first man, he says. And he says, this man who talked to his canary bird and called him little thing while he was 40, Jack, has never stopped loving him. So he tries to explain this gratitude debt towards his teacher. And these pages make us understand that the goal, the purpose of education is not the obtention of a degree. The purpose and goal of education, and I would like to use Kabafi's poem metaphor. Here we have the myth of the lys. Metabafis is saying to the reader, warning, careful, because the important thing is not to reach Ithaca. The important thing is to know how to recognize and live with intensity the experience of the journey to go to Ithaca. This is the experience that will make us better. Once we're there will be nothing to be learned. So once you receive your degree, your diploma, you will learn nothing, and that will mean that the journey was not good if you haven't learned enough. This is why figures are not important. Universities has given 3,000 degrees, but what about the content? What about this? What do these 3,000 people think? Do they think? No one cares about that. So this journey to Ithaca, and here we are today in Spain, and I have to have a thought for Machado, a great poet, who talks about, well, he wrote a poem, and I remember always, caminante no hay camino, se hace camino al andar. Se hace camino al andar. Walker, there's no path. You build the path while walking. So this is the experience of the journey. So it's this journey, in fact, that will make us better. The adventure of knowledge and school is in a eternal movement. And there are other pages that we should read again in Camus to know that the possession of truth generates violence and hampers, or it makes it impossible to search for it. He wrote about truth a lot and about how truth is imposed on others with violence and in the name of the good for humanity. And Camus saw all of this, and he foresaw the danger of the traffickers of truth. And today, in the internet and in the politics, in the world of politics, we have a lot of traffickers of truths and of certainties. Ignorant people don't look for the truth because they believe they hold it. So the movement of school, this dialogue between the teacher and the pupil, helps prevent this mistake. Camus said, as it was quoted yesterday, poverty is a fortress without a gate. And I can say here that ignorance is a fortress without a gate. Inside the people, or with the people who are ignorant, there's no possibility of a dialogue. And I'd like to conclude with a couple of things that I'd like to refer to. Machado's poems again. Machado wrote this poem, and I'm going to read it in Spanish, in my bad Spanish.
No, la verdad, y ven conmigo a buscarla. La tuya, guárdatela. La tuya, guárdatela. Ven conmigo a buscar la verdad. Viens avec moi.
Come with me, search the truth. Your truth, you can keep it for yourself, so it's useless. We need to look for it together. We need to search it together. So now, I'd like to conclude with what Camus concluded his lectures. That lecture from which we got the title of these gatherings, of these Trobades. The utopia of fighting. When I'm talking about this school, I'm told that I'm crazy because I have a view of education in an instrumental world like ours is something that is not possible anymore. But I have hope. I believe we must fight for it. Because if our society, although our society considers utopia as something that is useless, the best way to give sense to our lives is to fight for this utopia, if we live in it. Because also Camus teaches us this coincidence between our thinking and the way we live. If philosophy, if literature, if thinking, if the thoughts are not transformed into a way of life, then we've missed our chance of being true men. And I'm going to read this excerpt, and Camus knows that what he's written in his lecture could be criticized, and he imagines that criticism and says, the whole of Europe of today says that this is for nothing, but we're here in the world to prove the opposite. So these discussions and these meetings today have had this spirit of showing the opposite.
Merci.
Thank you.
Merci, merci.
Thank you.
No sé si queréis hacer alguna pregunta a Nuccio.
Would anyone like to ask a question or a comment or make a comment?
Estamos todos, el diálogo se instaura en el interior de cada uno.
The dialogue is taking place within each of us, isn't it?
Gracias a usted.
Thank you very much, Nuccio.
Super.
Donc ça t'a plu?
Oui, beaucoup.
Bien. Parce qu'il y avait des passages au fond qui se croisaient.
Parfaitement.
Bien, ça, c'est
Grazie.
Ouais.
Très, très bien.
Non, ça m'a permis un petit peu, parce que sinon j'aurais dû couper les citations. Elles
Et
sont
ça,
très
c'était
belles.
très belle. Non,
très
ça,
belles.
ça marchait très bien.
Et aussi, ces vers de Machado, au début, sont très beaux.
Si os parece, aunque estemos adelantados, ¿no?
I know we're a bit
Yo creo que
in advance,
si os parece bien, podemos
but
a lo
if
mejor
you agree, we could perhaps continue now
y por tanto
and
acercarnos a lo que serían estas conclusiones, los que
now
ya conocéis el proyecto.
come to the conclusions. As you already, for those who already know this project, we usually try to find a voice that helps us conclude and do the closing to help us link all the different voices that we've been listening to during these 2 days. So in each of these voices, we were looking for the building of a space where that becomes a meeting space and a space for dialogue. I don't usually announce who will do the conclusions. It's a sort of a surprise. And this time, as you all know already, is a very special edition with a lot of symbolism because of the enormous difficulty of launching the project this year. Also, because of the difficulties we're all undergoing, and the fact that we have not given up to share these days together. In this case, we wanted the conclusions to be prepared by the person who conceived this project that was then which was then passed on to me and my team. And that person who conceived the project is Miguel Moratinos, and he's not here with us, but he will be here online on a virtual format. And the ex-president of the Commission Studies, our dear friend, and thanks to my teacher, we've been talking about education, and we are here, in fact, because I had a professor, Michel Barret, who was my theater teacher in the Lyceum, and he made me discover the character of Victoria in the state of siege. And this is why we're all here today. And now I'll give the floor to Agnès Spiquel and Miguel Ángel Moratinos.
Bonjour Miguel. Ah, on n'entend pas Miguel. Vous m'entendez moi?
Oui, oui, je vous entends très bien.
Bonjour.
Bonjour, ça va bien?
Très très bien.
Je suis ravi.
Eh ben, et moi non, pas moi, j'ai peur. Non, mais c'est lui qui m'a dit qu'il commençait.
Hi,
Non, je dis que je suis ravi.
Mais tu m'avais dit que tu dirais quelque
But you said you would take the floor, but if you want me to start with the conclusions, I will. Well, you can start and then I'll take the floor. Okay. Miguel will talk about the perspectives, and I'm going to be the witness, simply the witness of these meetings, of these gatherings. It's very difficult to talk about after the intensity of what we've experienced. These third Trobades make us reflect around this very simple sentence by Camus: there is no life without dialogue. This simple sentence has become a very deep sentence after the pandemic months and a moment where we see the hatred prevailed in the world at the visible and invisible levels. But by their very nature, Trobades are a dialogue. We've been submerged in our words, and COVID has imposed limitations, made things difficult for the organizers, and have made it impossible for us to have some presences. But the forces of the dialogue has won, and we've experienced it, and we've realized how it goes deep within us, with words and beyond words. And this brings us to another expression by Camus, as we've experienced the dialogue embodied here on stage with the audience, in the streets, in the restaurant, in the streets during the coffee breaks, and Germaine made us all dance. And the translators, the interpreters, please a round of applause for them, because I find their work incredible. Thank you very much on behalf of the interpreters. Thank you. This dialogue, never-ending dialogue, have led to interesting words. I wanted to mention all the different nationalities to make it, to show to you how many nationalities of the Mediterranean are here present, with different complexities, but each participant has a multiple identity marked by their story. And here I would like to refer to all participants giving the best of themselves with spirit, their heart and their body, generously mobilized in a very generous way, in the spirit of Trobades, so vibrant and generous. And please, if I don't mention some names, they're not forgotten, but I will just refer to some of you. I can think of the Edgar Morin, and philosopher, Abdon Hassan, who received the awards, Gilles d'Or and Gildor and Noir with their voice and guitar, the round table, well, and Pruto, and then the round table by the three creators on the role of art, the exchange of two arts, also Israel and Palestine. The Albert Camus texts that have been reviewed, the Nathalie's poems, Joseph, Resonance, the dance of Ami, the dialogue with the storm and the place with us, and Germaine's dance, who has relaunched this adventure of the African dance. Germaine has embodied the dialogue in her body and her words. We have been moved. We want to say thank you. We feel gratitude constantly, and I would like to summarize this gratitude in everything that has been given and received during these 2 days. Our reflections on the dialogue has deployed several forms. We've seen a lot of richness, and also we've experienced failures. We felt that through the texts and seen how dialogue was essential, crucial for Camus, with many nuances and painful moments. We could have found solitude in him. We've had the musical experience with the dissonance of the absurd and the wrong notes. Camus was looking for words to talk about fracture and the wish of fraternity that became impossible, all in the context of the colonization of Algeria. I know this is everything a bit not well ordered, but here are my memories. Open the space to go through the wall, to go in circulation, recomposition, to dialogue with the world, with natural elements, to create a dialogue between the present times, the past and the future. The art as the starting point for dialogue. As well, we've seen many good creators here, and Germaine proved that to us again with a great passion. Dialogue implies conviction, but convincing is not always there. The other must remain free, and this implies making oneself understood, and dialogue implies both. Creating a space that will allow for difference and will keep it. Dialogue does not eliminate difference. We can listen to the agreement together. We can enjoy the monologues, and we've had musical metaphors, very beautiful. A dialogue implies responsibility, including the other in oneself, acknowledging the other's pain as ours, to letting oneself be touched, accepting being vulnerable. A silent deformation of dialogue. Hospitality implies being welcomed, and dialogue will create a fraternity at the level of man. A conspiration that is, in fact, a shared inspiration to work in the same sense in the site of the wound, and to work together, to open spaces for dialogue and for conspiration in this sense of the shared inspiration. All this has marked this third Trobades, and we must not forget to dance, and Camus would have loved that. Thank you, Trobades. Thank you, Sandra. Thank you, Miguel. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you, all of you who have been here with us, surrounding us, helping us, everyone that has made this possible. Thank you for everything that we have received in this extraordinary dialogue. Miguel?
Merci énormément, Agnès. Vous ne pouvez pas imaginer quand je me sens frustré.
Thank you very much, Agnès. When I feel frustrated, and even though I am far away, I think of these trovadas that I cherish so much. Thank you very much to you all. From Middle East, from Antalya, from Smiro, and I look at my beloved island of Menorca. I looked at my beloved daughter Sandra, and I look at you all in this Trobades Mediterraneas Albert Camus, and I would like to greet you from here, because unfortunately, because of several responsibilities, as the organizers would say, I couldn't make it here. I couldn't be present here. There has been a conference that I attended in Turkey by the United Nations, and unfortunately enough, there was a coincidence, and even though both events didn't exactly overlap, it was too difficult for me to make it here and to be present and to dialogue with you, because as I could hear, this was a dialogue and it was a great success. It's a great success, and this reflects what we had in mind since the very beginning when we thought about organizing this gathering in this small town of Menorca in San Luis. We always wanted to build this platform for meeting, for creating, for exchanging thoughts, and year after year this builds up more and more. These are the third gatherings, and at each gathering it has been shown that the legacy of Albert Camus is absolutely contemporary, and it is because of the first element that we have placed on the debate table. And there's this idea of concern and anguish that now we all have as citizens of the Mediterranean, and this is still present. And I hope that we will never be deprived of this impulse of being rebel, but in a constructive manner, as Camus would say. Being rebel and so being rebel, and in this third edition of the gatherings, it is so important to bear in mind that there's no life without a dialogue. And, well, this has been organized in an excellent manner. It has been so suggestive, so creative, and it has been organized with a lot of affection and with a lot of enthusiasm, and we have been able to participate and to make you all take part in this dialogue in an intense way throughout these days. And to me, from this site in the Middle East, well, I could get some impressions, I could get some remarks, some comments, and this is what makes me willing to keep working to maintain this legacy for the future. So it's always difficult to start an initiative, and I'm talking from my diplomatic and political experience here. You know, we could think about this, and you know, at the beginning we were just a few, but I would like to thank those few people and the mayors of San Luis, as well as the Council of Menorca and the government of the Balearic Islands. And I would like to thank several sponsors who were there since the very beginning to support and to think about this cultural event, you know, that would bring media attention and Spanish public opinion, as well as the Mediterranean and the world's public opinion. So the first Trobades, the first day was the first edition was a success that nobody would have expected. And then came difficult times because you had to convince again all the supporters in order to create the second edition. Second edition is like a test, right? Because, I mean, it shows if we do have the capacity for reflection and the capacity to persist and to coexist and to maintain the support of society. So it is always worth to make the effort so that this ends in a successful manner. And now this year, of course, the third edition shows that the project has got to its cruise speed. The project is ongoing now. It is a mandatory reference. It is an inevitable reference in the search for critical and creative thoughts in the Mediterranean. I mean, we cannot forget anymore, and we cannot turn a blind eye to the proposals that stem from this Trobades Albert Camus. Now, this is an inevitable gathering event, and this will be our guide and our way of working for the future. So, well, I would like to congratulate you for this debate and for showing that there is no life without a dialogue. But dear friends, dialogue is essential. In the catalogue that was distributed by organizers, there was a written contribution about what I would expect and how I would like to contribute to these first days. And at the end of my text, at the end of all the compliments and the congratulations and everything, I would like to really pay tribute to what dialogue means, what dialogue is, especially as a diplomat as well. And as Agnès was saying, I'm totally convinced that dialogue is necessary, but it is not enough. For Miguel Ángel Moratinos, dialogue is not sufficient. It is not, dear friends. Dialogue is a requirement. It is an indispensable requirement. But to me, from the bottom of my heart, and with all my conviction, I believe that this would almost be somehow a certain failure if, after this almost 3 days of exchange and debate and listening to the other, if we would all come to our homes and to our small lives and routines, repeating the same things over and over and behaving in the same way over and over. This wouldn't be it. We have to take something from this dialogue, dear friends. We have to behave in a different way. We have to commit to change from this dialogue that we have had. We have to commit to improve. We must confide towards the challenges of the 21st century, this uncertainty, this totalitarianism of vigilance, this political totalitarianism. We must be able to listen to the others and to draw conclusions from what these days meant, these 3 days of critical reflection. And we must convey this and translate this into something in our lives. I do not want to extend myself, but I would like to propose the organizers of the 4th edition, which will probably be object to debate, to internal debate, to see how we can pursue that legacy by Albert Camus. I would like to propose then that we reflect, because, well, these days I have the sensation that I was not able to participate with the different actors who were here present in Menorca, in San Luis. And I thought, when reading about the main figures that took part in the third Trovadas, I was tempted to dedicate some time of reflection and debate and exchange on the 2 main personalities. I mean, there have been lots of personalities, as Agnès Spiquel was saying. But let's say that to develop my idea, I will refer to 2 figures which are essential in the thoughts that are here with us. I mean, logically, I'm referring to Camus, and as you were hearing the interventions, when I'm thinking about the fact that we can dialogue and that we have to dialogue about the Mediterranean action, I would like to say that thanks to this event, I remember that before the diplomatic and political action in order to solve conflicts, the first task that we have as citizens of the Mediterranean, the first task is to recover the thoughts of the South, the Pensée du Midi, as Camus described in The Rebel. And the Pensée du Midi, the thought of the South, is really a symbol of what we're going through, intellectually speaking, in the 21st century. We have been fighting a battle, actually, and when he defends and when he talks about the Pensée du Midi, he opposes this to the idealism of the North, German idealism. And I don't want to go into detail, but I guess that he will have brilliantly proposed the need for culture and education as substantial elements of what thinking is for all of us. And for us, we citizens of the South who are resigned intellectually to be the object of market-oriented kind of thinking, well, we have to mobilize ourselves and we have to think about this pensée de midi, and this has to be claimed, and this has to be made visible, and this has to be advocated for in this time. So this pillar, the pensée du midi, must be placed within the complexity of the 21st century. And in my readings, this is what I got, and I was able to convince the great dialogue and politologue in France to accept the award from last year for the Trobades, because, well, his ultimate contribution for Edgar Morin was about thinking about the complementarity and the complexity of this thought. Without this developed by Edgar Morin, we couldn't be talking now about these fundamental principles. So I would also like to thank Michel Barret, and I would invite him to think on how to organize the next Trobades and how to combine the synergies between the pensée du midi and the complex thought, the pensée complexe. And I would like to convey that this is what I wanted to convey from this virtual world, this world of the screens. And actually, I've always wanted this humanism, and I've always thought that this was an overflowing thought that I had. I would like to congratulate you all. I would like to congratulate Sandra Monard, as well as all the team, Carlos, the translators, interpreters, and all those who have participated in this for 2.5 days. Thank you and congratulations to the town council in San Luis, in Mahon, the Govern Balear, the media, all those who have disseminated this critical thought of the Camusian Trobades. This critical thought makes us all think that a better world is possible. It's not an ideal world, it's not a utopic world, it's a world where the impulse for life has to beat the impulse for death. Eros must beat Thanatos, and we must be able to renew ourselves in a constructive manner. We need to rememorate what we're living in these years, and we need to recover that hope, the creative hope, the hope based on solidarity, that any good citizen in the Mediterranean and in the world must have to create a space for fraternity and coexistence. Thank you very much, and I hope that next time I will be able to make it there, and that I will be able to be present in this great privilege of the possibility to dialogue, to exchange, to meet the other, and to dream together for a better world. Thank you.
Pues muchísimas gracias.
All right, thank you. And let me say again, thank you. Thank you for having dreamt. And thank you for leading us in this path, such a difficult path this year especially, but we have resisted and we were able to articulate this edition for 2021. Now we close this edition, but before that, I would like once more to thank, now we're going to say goodbye to you, and I would like to thank all those who made this edition possible. The Town Council of San Luis, the Mayor, Ms. Carol, Deborah, the team from San Luis, Mercedes, Virginia, Maria, the co-organizers as well, the Consejo Insular de Menorca, which is present here through Miguel Maria, who's always supporting this project. The Town Council of Mao, our main sponsor, the Fundación de Fomento de Turismo, our sponsors from the Balearic government and the Ministry of Culture and Sport in Spain. I would like to thank our collaborators, the Instituto Cervantes, the Conselleria de Fons Europeus and Universidad y Cultura, and the Institut d'Estudis Balears, as well as Fundación La Caixa, Universidad de las Islas Baleares, Union for the Mediterranean, and hosting also the gala at the Teatro Principal de Mao, our two hotels, and with Bersac and Cristina Bedford and Aquitania, who allowed us to build this kind of home these days, and thank you to the different means that have been put in place. As you know, I would like to show you who is behind this project. So I'm going to call all those who have been helping us. I would like to thank especially Carlos Dominguez, who has been my right hand and my soulmate on this project.
A nuestro asesor científico, Michel Barret.
Mr. Michel Barret, our scientific counselor. Nerea, designer.
A Javier, que se ocupa, mi jefe de prensa.
Javier, who's the media manager. David Barret and David Esquina, in charge of the institutional relationships, Miriam, community manager, Jordi, web, also the video girls, Ingrid, Lara, Clara, our interpreters, our translators throughout the year, Ana, Carlota, Samuel, Isabel, the interpreters who were here with us, Francis, Frederic, Belen, Violeta, Susana, Cristina. Thank you. Thank you to all of you. And Malter, as well as two drivers, Mark and Fanny, Tara, Brilliantless Tara, Aman, Anna, Tono, Acoustic, with Fer, Sonia, Alejandro, Transportes Menorca, the printers, and all of you. So see each other hopefully in 2023 under the topic, the places of the world. See you then.
Y Sandra Maunat.
And Sandra Maunat.
No hay vida sin diálogo.
There is no life without dialogue, and there are no Trobades without Sandra.
David Arquimbau, grandísimo fotógrafo y amigo.
The dear friend and photographer.
Y Mariana Fernández, por supuesto.
Mariana Fernández, of course. We always forget someone.
No sortigueu del recinte sense que us ho indiqui el personal d'organització. Feu cas en tot moment de les indicacions del personal d'organització. No salgáis del recinto sin que os lo indique el personal de organización. Haced caso en todo momento de las indicaciones del personal de organización.